Hello, everyone from YouTube and Rumble communities, and many thanks for your attention. Today is 19th of June. Now it's 11 o'clock Moscow time in the morning, and well, I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments, and I hope you will find this live stream informative and useful. Although, dear friends, as you all notice already, nowadays news updates more often than not look like sort of World War III updates, and that is for a reason. On one hand, we have a Ukrainian crisis in which there is a U.S. Led collective West that is 40 plus countries. On the other side, Russia and quite effectively rest of the world, or the vast majority of humanity. And also nowadays there is a extremely dangerous Middle Eastern crisis in which on one side there is Israel and US, and yet again 40 plus countries, one may argue, which is a collective West. So we are in a situation when quite effectively collective West, elites of the collective West are fighting the rest of the world or the humanity in large. That's why nowadays these news updates, as I said, more often than not look like chronicles of the World War III, beginning of the one, which is very unfortunate, but it is what it is. And today's update, by the way, not going to be any different. But you be the judge. I mean, let's start news segment, and we have this report from RIA Novosti that Israel stated that it has attacked two nuclear sites in Iran, in addition to all the other attacks on nuclear sites that was conducted previously. So the Israeli Air Force attacked an inactive nuclear reactor in Arak and a nuclear facility in Natanz in Iran at night time. Israeli Defense Forces press service reported Iran confirmed this information and provide details of this attack to IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. On that, a little bit late because we have some updates in regards to these strikes on nuclear facilities, which is a tremendous crime, obviously, that Israel is committing. But Iran, by the way, is not standing, not a bystander. Iran is retaliating. And for example, last evening, during the night and early this morning, there was Iranian limited retaliatory strikes on military and logistical infrastructure of the Kyiv regime in number of areas. And what we know for now is that, according to Iranian state media, missiles targeted the IDF cyber commander C-41 HQ and also IDF's military intelligence center in Gavyam near Tel Aviv. I guess some other areas were targeted also, and according to reports, Iran is beginning to deploy its latest variations of the ballistic missiles. I have several videos, by the way, for you with the consequences of strikes that Iran conducted on Israeli, as a retaliatory strike on Israeli military. So this is aftermath. There is another video. Another one. and this one here. This is what orbital lever, but well, nevertheless, as you can see and hear, Iranian missiles did manage to go through this air defense missiles and target her, and also explosions. And by the way, it's really a massive explosion and a huge shockwave. So yes, as I said, Iran is retaliating. Iran is retaliating, and with these limited strikes, achieving its main goal, I guess, which is to basically inflict enough damage on Israel so that Israeli leadership will consider to begin talks or the de-escalation. I don't think this will happen because more likely Israel and its NATO allies will continue their attacks on Iran. But well, Iran is trying. Iran is trying. According to reports, dear friends, Iran has sent a delegation to Oman yesterday. Also, reports are that tomorrow negotiations might take place between Iranian delegation and a number of European countries on the topic of Iran's nuclear program, on the topic of de-escalation. So Iran clearly demonstrates for many weeks, since the beginning of the talks between Iran and the US on nuclear program, which was used by US as a deception, by the way. We all know now about it. Many media outlets reported on that matter. So Iran is time and again demonstrates that it's, Tehran is ready for agreement to be reached. But, well, as I said many times before, Israeli leadership, Zionists, will not consider negotiations until they are forced to do so. And same can be said about globalists and the neocons. They want regional war. If Israel wants destruction of all its neighbors to dominate in the region, then neocons and globalists have a little different strategy. They also want destruction of Iran and the Middle East, but their reasoning is that they want to shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf and through Hormuz Strait, while provoking regional war there on sectarian and ethnic lines. And they want to basically target China by doing so. I spoke about it many times before. So therefore, I am skeptical of all these statements that West wants regime change. No, West don't want regime change. Israel might do, but not the West, because regime change will not allow them to shut down navigation in the Persian Gulf for a long period of time. And they want navigation to be cut there as long as possible. And the only way to achieve that is to create a military conflict on religious, on sectarian and ethnic lines between Israel and Iran, between Gulf states that are predominantly Sunni Muslim, and Iran, which is predominantly Shiite, between Arabs and the Persians, Azerbaijanis, Kurds, and so on. And unfortunately, this strategy of the Western ruling class may be somewhat successful if global powers like Russia and China will not get engaged directly. And we have indicators now that, well, both capitals, Moscow and China, are actually engaged in diplomatic terms and trying to de-escalate. Some more information on that a little late, but now let me share with you this report that Trump stated that Iran was weeks away from getting nuclear weapons. Well, Western ruling class, their puppets in the governments of Western countries, including US, they still continue to push this false narrative that Iran was creating atomic bombs, nuclear weapons, which is not true, by the way. And Even head of IAEA, by the way, Rafael Grossi, was forced because he has no proofs. He is an Israeli asset, right? Mossad's asset and CIA asset. And they can force him to say that, yes, Iran was working on nuclear weapons. But then, in that case, he have to provide evidences for that, right? Evidences that are based on information of experts of the IAEA that were monitoring Iranian nuclear facilities constantly. But they have no such a proof. So therefore, Rafael Grossi, head of IAEA, forced to state that there is no proof Iran is working on a nuclear bomb. Right? And formally, at least, dear friends, IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, is a UN watchdog, right? So therefore, not Israel and not anyone else has any rights, any legal rights to attack Iran. Period. But yet again, Trump already demonstrated that his asset, he's under heavy influence. Probably he's blackmailed by Israeli Mossad and Zionists, and he will do whatever he is told to do by them, right? And that's why he is believing Israeli intelligence, which is for last 30 years, claiming that Iran is 2 weeks away to build nuclear weapon. For last 30 years, by the way, Iran is always 2 weeks away or few weeks away to build the nuclear weapons, while US intelligence itself denies this claim, rejects this claim. And Tulsi Gabbard just recently, by the way, stated again that based on the information that US intelligence has, Iran is not working on the nuclear weapons. But nevertheless, US leadership, which is absolutely controlled by Zionists and Israeli secret services, they are still pushing this false narrative. And unfortunately, it's only a matter of time when US will openly, directly begins to strike Iran. And that's going to be beginning of the end of US itself. Not the Iran, by the way, which as a civilization exists for thousands of years and will continue to exist. But US's involvement, direct open involvement in this war against Iran will definitely be a beginning of the end of US as a state and as we knew it. Just mark my word, dear friends. That's exactly what's going to happen. Meanwhile, dear friends, TASS News Agency is reporting here that radioactive pollution was detected at Iran's Natanz facility. But yet again, no threats, according to Grossi, by the way. Since the beginning of this crisis in the Middle East, I was focusing on the topic of nuclear facilities, on radiation, in every single update, right? And finally, we are at the point when IAEA is acknowledging that these strikes, these criminal actions of the Israel, attacks on civilian nuclear facilities of Iran, has created a radioactive hazard, as it was expected. But Grossi still denies that there is a radioactive pollution in large, which is crazy, isn't it? As I said in previous updates, if you have detected increase in radiation levels on nuclear facilities, that means there is already pollution. That means as a result of explosions, these radioactive particles already being taken by wind, God knows in which direction, right? So once you have, these nuclear facilities, their safety was breached, from very first second there, you have a radioactive pollution. It's just logic, by the way. You don't have to be a nuclear scientist to, yes, understand this. But nevertheless, this topic is being kind of tabooed for now. On a worldwide scale, by the way. I don't see many media outlets, even here in Russia, we're talking about radioactive hazard that much. Some do, but not in a scale that is necessary to inform the people about dangers that Israel is presenting to this world with these criminal attacks on nuclear sites. So radiation levels that exceeded the norm were detected inside the protective perimeter at Iran's Natanz nuclear facility, but their incident poses no threat to the population or environment. Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, Rafael Grossi, stated, and yet again, you be the judge, by the way, how adequate this statement of Grossi is, when he is on one hand acknowledging that, safety of nuclear facilities were breached, and there is a increase in radiation, and at the same time he is saying that there is no danger for environment or for the people. I mean, what the hell is going on here? And no one is challenging these psychos, Bob. Unfortunately, no one is challenging these psychopaths. Meanwhile, Trump continues to act as some gangster or tough guy, and yesterday issued yet another final, as we call it, ultimatum to Iran. Okay, we already know, by the way, how Iran responded on the first ultimatum from day before yesterday. Supreme leader of Iran stated that Iranian people will never ever surrender to enemies, and that's it. A quite understandable statement from Tehran. Still, Trump is threatening, issuing ultimatums, as if anybody cares, really. As if anybody really cares, man, what Trump has to say. It's all about plans that neocons, Zionists, Israeli secret services, and globalists have. Trump already proved that he is a puppet in their hand. That's it, right? And according to media, for example, Bloomberg media outlet, US is preparing to strike Iran in the coming days, as I was expecting and as I was predicting. So high-ranking US officials are preparing for the possibility of strikes on Iran in the coming days. Bloomberg reports, citing sources. Some of the agency's interlocutors indicated that the strike could take place over the weekend. According to one of the sources, the heads of some federal agencies have also begun preparing for the attack. And as I said, by the way, US will get engaged openly in this war against Iran. And one should keep in mind that the US is already engaged, but they are still denying that. But once US will get engaged openly, Iran will have every legal rights to retaliate, and Iran will retaliate, by the way, in a massive scale. And US gonna suffer. US gonna suffer big time. And I think her open involvement of US in this war, as I already said, is going to be beginning of the end of United States as we knew it. And Bloomberg is reporting that it might take another several days before US will get involved openly, because US is bringing more and more military assets towards the region. And for example, yesterday CNN reported that USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier strike group is set to deploy to Europe next week, positioning it near the Middle East. This will place a third US aircraft carrier within reach of the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran, according to US official and two other sources familiar with the deployment. And yet again, dear friends, I predicted this, isn't it? I said that US will redeploy towards Middle East, whatever aircraft or whatever carrier strike groups they have in the Indo-Pacific, and that's exactly what's happening. And they will bring I was saying that they will most likely bring another aircraft carrier into Mediterranean, into Eastern Mediterranean, and that's exactly what's happening. And Gerald Ford gonna be stationed somewhere there in the Eastern Mediterranean, and planes will operate to strike Iran from there. In addition, US is deploying F-35s, B-2 bombers, F-16s, I believe, and whatever assets they have. Nothing to be said about refueling tankers, aerial tankers that are in dozens being deployed towards the Middle East in recent days. And by the way, if anybody still doubts outcome of this war, let me tell you that US already lost it even before officially acknowledging its involvement. Israel is losing this war, and the US and other NATO member states are soon going to find out hard way what is it to fight the rest of the humanity. Because Iran is not alone. Vast majority of humanity stands with Iranian people and will support Iran with whatever in any ways they can. So this is a world war, by the way, already unleashed, right? Even if global nuclear superpowers not yet firing at each other directly and openly, although US clearly participated in the attack on Russian nuclear triad, US and UK, both nuclear countries, right? They already strike Russian nuclear triad, and I see that strike that was conducted with the use of their Ukrainian proxies as a initial strike, first wave of strikes on Russian nuclear triad. That's how I see it, right? And Moscow did not yet retaliated. I remind you, dear friends, that Moscow did not yet retaliated against countries that were involved in that attack on Russian nuclear triad when strategical bombers were damaged and some destroyed. Moscow will retaliate for sure, in kind, on time of its choosing, right? But yet again, this is a World War III that is unfolding before very our eyes. And on one side, there is collective West, elites, so-called elites, and the ruling class of the collective West, and their proxies. And on the other side is the rest of the world, or vast majority of humanity. That's the reality that we are facing. And collective West will lose. Either everyone will lose. Either we will end up in a full-scale nuclear exchange, and in that case, humanity is doomed, right? And this civilization. Or there is another option, collective West will lose, because in no circumstances they're going to win. It's just not happening, right? And by the way, US, as I already said in my previous updates, US society is quite divided. It was divided before, by the way, between neolibs and their assets, their supporters, conservatives, traditionalists, and so on. But now, US is divided, US public is divided even more, because even among supporters of the Trump, by the way, there is a sort of a civil war now. Because many people that were openly, actively supporting Trump are extremely disappointed. They were really hoping that Trump and his team will be truly America first, but they are not. And everyone understands that they are acting as a proxies of the Israel now, right? And no wonder. And this divide gonna further increase 100%. And no wonder some 40% of Americans, by the way, expect a civil war inside the country now in next decades, according to polls. And 40% is quite a high number, isn't it? That this information indicates a level of divide of US society, and level and demonstrates how stretched social fabric is there. Right? So 40% of Americans believe a civil war in the US is somewhat or very likely within the next decade. New YouGov poll released on Tuesday suggests. So I think this information is also something that we should pay attention to, because, as I said, very day that US will openly get engaged with in this war against Iran, we can count as a day when day of beginning of the end of United States as we knew it. And that includes disintegration of US and the Civil War too. That's my reading of the big picture, by the way. TASS news agency, meanwhile, is reporting that Iran is considering all options in response to possible US intervention in their conflict. And this was stated, by the way, by Abbas Araghchi, foreign minister of Iran, who is going to be in Europe, I believe, tomorrow to conduct some talks with a number of European states. Yet again, I can understand why Iranian leadership is still trying to find ways to de-escalate the situation, because they never wanted this war to begin with, right? They've been attacked. But I'm sorry to say, but they're going to fail in this attempt to reach some diplomatic resolution for this crisis, because neither Zionists and their assets in Israel, neither neocons in US or the globalists that are mainly in charge of Europe gonna accept the escalation. Exactly opposite will happen, and as I already said, they will try to bring in on this phase of this escalation not just US but other NATO member states also, and on the next phase of this war against Iran, globalists will use globalists and neocons in US will use whatever influence they have on the Gulf states and other regional countries, so that they will attack Iran also. And that way, globalists, Western ruling class, hopes to generate military conflict that will last long enough, and therefore navigation in the Persian Gulf and through Hormuz Strait will be shut down long enough to really achieve some significant hit or damage on the Chinese economy. Because if Israelis are focused on destruction of neighboring countries so that they will manage to dominate, they will continue their domination in the region, US political class, US elites, neocons, and whoever are in charge there, and also globalists, they are focused on China. Their main target is China and Russia, by the way. And they will try, and I'm afraid they might succeed, to provoke this war in the region between the neighbors, when not just Israel is engaged, but also Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, potentially Turkey. And that will create this war on sectarian and ethnic lines that usually are most long-lasting, because once you provoke such a war, then hate will overtake common sense, and that kind of conflicts are very difficult to stop. Yeah, let's see. By the way, I have already spoke about this many times. Hopefully, Moscow and Beijing will try to influence the situation and will not allow globalists to achieve their goals, but they have to be very active and very persuasive. I mean, Moscow and Beijing. And let's see what's going to happen. Meanwhile, we have this report that Trump claimed yesterday that he spoke with Putin the day before, which is a lie, by the way. Yet another lie from Trump. I believe press spokesman of the Russian president was asked about the statement of Trump that he had a phone conversation with the Russian president, and Kremlin reacted that Trump was exaggerating or something like that, right? Kremlin did not say that directly that Trump was lying, but there was no phone conversation, by the way, between two presidents the day before yesterday. There was none. Trump was just lying. There was a phone conversation. Last time they had phone conversation was like a week ago or something, but definitely not the day before yesterday. But a phone conversation that really happened is a phone conversation between Russian President Vladimir Putin and their UAE leader and their sides discussed Iran-Israeli conflict. So Russian President Vladimir Putin has spoken with his counterpart from the United Arab Emirates about the worsening situation in the Middle East, according to Kremlin. In a phone call with the UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Putin reaffirmed Russia's willingness to mediate and facilitate dialogue between the parties to the conflict, according to Kremlin readout. The two leaders expressed deep concern over the ongoing escalation of their conflict, warning that it threatens to have their most serious consequences for the entire region, and I will add the entire world. The statement added that both sides stressed their urgent need to halt their hostilities and step up political and diplomatic efforts to resolve their contentious issues, including those related to Iran nuclear program. So, as I said, dear friends, Moscow and Beijing, it is in strategical interests of these two countries and many other countries in this world, or to majority of countries in this world, to not allow the Western world and Israel, or collective West, to provoke regional war in the Middle East. And to achieve this, both Moscow and Beijing and other capitals have to be extremely active and persuasive. And they have to talk with their Middle Eastern countries like UAE and Russian president doing that, exactly that. And they have to persuade leadership of Middle Eastern countries that they will make fatal mistake if they will get engaged in this war against Iran. And hopefully Moscow and Beijing will be persuasive enough to make sure that none of these Gulf states, by the way, and no one else from the region gonna attack Iran, because they will all lose in that case. I mean, let's see, by the way, let's see how successful this diplomatic effort of Moscow and their other capitals outside of the Western world will be to at least, I mean, Moscow not going to influence decision-making process in the West, we all understand, but Moscow has quite good relationships with Saudi Arabia, with UAE, with Bahrain, by the way, with Qatar, right, with Iraq, with Turkey, and Moscow can use this good working relationships for diplomatic effort. And China, by the way, also has a good working and maybe even great relationships with their Middle Eastern countries, if you take in account how important Chinese economy is for these Gulf states, right? So there is a chance, by the way, there is a chance that Moscow and Beijing will be successful in this diplomatic effort, and collective West will not be able to provoke regional war on a religious and sectarian, on sectarian or the religious and ethnic lines. And hopefully Gulf states and others in the region will stay out of this war. Hopefully, they are in no position to prohibit US or UK or other NATO member states to use their airspaces. They just are in no position to oppose that, right? We all understand this, but at least they should not get involved in this war against Iran directly. And hopefully Moscow and Beijing will be persuasive enough and successful enough in this diplomatic effort so that they will stay out of this war. And in that case, by the way, as I already said, collective West and Israel, I mean, and Israel is a part of collective West, isn't it? Collective West, US led this anti-human coalition gonna fail. They already failed, by the way. Only chance they might have to achieve their goals is to provoke regional war between neighboring countries, and hopefully they will not be able to do so. They're alone not gonna defeat Iran, by the way. It's not happening. They may bomb day 2, 3, 10, 100, but eventually, as a result of Iran's retaliatory strikes, they're gonna suffer such a losses that they will beg than for ceasefire and the escalation. But by the way, Donald Trump does not understand this, isn't it? Absolutely not. And because he's a moron, by the way. I mean, let's be real here. And for example, yesterday he was asked about topic of Russia's diplomatic efforts to de-escalate in the situation, and just look what he said. By the way, how stupid this individual is, how arrogant, narcissist, man, unbelievable. And this is our elderly man. I mean, usually as we grown up, we are becoming more and more serious, right? At least that's how I think should happen. And seems like Trump did not grow up whatsoever, because he's like 80-year-old man. How? And he's acting like a, I don't know, man, teenager that has no idea about anything, really. Just listen.
Stupid. Would have never happened if I was president. You guys agree with that, right? Would have never happened if I was president. Putin would have never done it. And I spoke to him yesterday, and I said, you know, he actually offered to help mediate. I said, do me a favor. Mediate your own. Let's mediate Russia first, okay? I said, Vladimir, let's mediate Russia first. You can worry about this later.
You see? That's the state of mind of Trump, by the way. That's the state of mind of Trump. It's hard to comment, but I mean, I can understand why so many members of our community from US and why so many US citizens, public figures included, are extremely disappointed in Trump. I mean, he's really losing it. I mean, he's out of his mind, man. And let's be real. I mean, in at least before he was inaugurated, he was not leaving impression of this, that he is this much psycho, by the way. He really don't. But something happened to him. I don't know. Maybe he was blackmailed, threatened by Israeli secret services, by his own donors in US from Zionist clique. Maybe something else. But I mean, he is undergoing some dramatic change, isn't it? Because before, I got impression that he was at least trying. You know, he was acting always, but he was kind of trying to be adequate, like make impression that he is a serious person. Now he is completely losing it, right? He has no breaks whatsoever. This is crazy, man. This is crazy. I mean, you tell me what is your take, dear friends, but this dramatic change like that in a couple of weeks' time, that's not normal. That's not more normal, man. Anyways, dear friends, let's go back to some other news. And well, Erdogan, Turkish president, backs Iranian response to Israel. Not surprisingly, by the way, Erdogan already demonstrated that he's a very sneaky politician, isn't it? He is waiting for his opportunity. He will make statements in support of Iran, and same time, and he does that, and same time he will continue to assist Israel. Not officially, obviously, but he will continue to assist Israel. And he will wait. He will wait. And by the way, when collective West will lose this conflict, and with collective West, Israel also, no one should be surprised if Turkey will move its troops, if Turkey will at that point really escalate with Israel and will move its troops through Syria into Israel, by the way. Turkey already has control over the Syria, right? Vast majority of the territory there. And the regime in Damascus is a Turkish proxy. So that's what is going to happen, in my opinion. Erdogan will play both sides for now, and when inevitably collective West will lose, he will move in. He will escalate rhetoric against Israel, and he might move Turkish troops through Syria into Israel, and then claim that he has liberated Jerusalem, by the way. You know? And he, I believe, has such ambitions, by the way, and his inner circle. They do have such ambitions. So one should pay attention to moves that Erdogan is making. But for now, we have this statement. Iran has legitimate right to respond to Israel's attacks. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said, accusing West Jerusalem of engaging in a banditry and state terrorism. He also compared Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to Adolf Hitler. Israel began, we have a quote from here. It is entirely natural, legitimate, and lawful for Iran to defend itself against Israel's banditry and state terrorism, Erdogan stated on Wednesday during the parliamentary group meeting in Ankara, capital of Turkey. The Turkish president strongly criticized Israel's leadership for its acts of aggression, claiming that Netanyahu has long surpassed their tyrant Hitler in the crime of genocide. He also condemned the global inaction of Israel's aggression in Gaza, seen by the UN Rights Committee as a characteristic of genocide, stating that the blood of massacred civilians, murdered babies, and children is splattered not only on the hands of and faces of those who support Israel's arrogance, but also on those who remain silent. One should challenge him and said what Turkey did to help Palestinians. What Turkey did to help Palestinians. I remind the difference that Turkey is still one of the main suppliers of many items, many goods to Israel, including fuel, by the way, that is used by IDF. So you see what kind of individual Erdogan is. He is acting on the public while playing on both sides, and he will wait. He will wait, and when inevitably collective West will lose, he will further escalate rhetoric against Israel, and I think it is a high probability that at that point, Turkey might move its troops into Israel through Syria. Just let's see. But yet again, let's hope Moscow, Beijing, other capitals in this world will be successful in diplomacy and will manage to persuade more and more countries, especially in the Middle East, not to get engaged directly in this war against Iran, and if necessary, because of the importance of these developments for whole of humanity, for the fate of whole of humanity, if necessary, maybe Moscow, together with Beijing, will even send its fleet to Persian Gulf and Hormuz Strait, maybe even in, maybe troops will be deployed, maybe even ground troops will be deployed in the Middle East. Because in no circumstances, Moscow and Beijing can allow collective West to provoke a regional war that will be then, divided on sectarian violence and hatred and ethnic violence and hatred that will destroy navigation in the Middle East through Persian Gulf and Hormuz Strait for years, by the way, and years, if not decades. So Moscow and Beijing cannot allow this to happen. So therefore, maybe Moscow will do exactly what Moscow did in 1971, when a Soviet fleet was sent to protect India, by the way. At the time, US and their other NATO member states were supporting Pakistan in a war between India and Pakistan, when eventually India won and Bangladesh gained independence. At that point, it was called Eastern Pakistan, right? And Bangladesh gained independence. And, India played a key role in that, obviously, but, Moscow also helped Bangladeshi people to become independent, right? And many people in India still remember to these days, by the way, that Moscow actually did help India big time, you know. And maybe Moscow will do something similar this time around too, and will send its fleet to Indian Ocean, to Persian Gulf, to deter NATO countries, to deter US and other and others from this anti-human coalition. So let's see. It is also a possibility, and China may join Russian fleet. You know, China may join. China might send its fleet also to participate in this humanitarian, I will say, operation. Anything is possible, and let's see. By the way, Moscow is very clear that we want to see the escalation, and everyone should listen. And most importantly, leadership of UAE, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar should listen. And in no circumstances get directly engaged in this war against Iran. So, dear friends, let me right now check also several Telegram channels for any breaking news in regards to Middle East, and then I will go through some other news, because, as I said, there are many areas of the crisis in this world, isn't it? In the Bushehr nuclear power plant in Iran, if the Bushehr nuclear power plant in Iran is struck, the resulting disaster would be compared to Chernobyl. This must be not allowed. Alexei Likhachov, CEO of Rosatom, stated. And by the way, in regards to Bushehr nuclear power plant, which is built and still under construction, new reactors of Russian Rosatom, and there are Russian specialists there. According to reports, Russian leadership spoke to Israeli side and issued a strong warning so that Israeli aircraft will stay away from Bushehr nuclear power plant. And well, based on reports that I see, Israeli leadership promised that they're not going to target this power plant. But yet again, can you trust Netanyahu? By the way, that of course you cannot. But let's hope Moscow's warning was strong enough, so that will deter Netanyahu's regime. Also, latest updates, by the way, just last few minutes were reported that Iran's IRGC stated it carried out precise strikes on Israeli Army Command and Intelligence Center that was located near one of their hospitals in the West. By the way, this is true. During their strikes on these military and intelligence facilities, precise strikes. Nearby, there was a hospital in Tel Aviv, and from a blast, from a shockwave, hospital was damaged. And Western media, Israeli propaganda and Western propaganda, gonna use this now to to push narrative that Iran intentionally struck a hospital, which is false, by the way. I have seen videos of that hospital. Clearly, whatever damage you're gonna see there is damage done by blast, right? By shockwave, not by direct heat, because in case of direct heat, there would be nothing left from that hospital, and there would be no walls and stuff, right? It would collapse, at least partially. So I have seen videos. I don't need IRGC's statement. I have seen videos. I know physics, maybe not. I'm not physics, but I do know something about physics. Clearly, damage that you can see on those videos is generated by shockwave. Strike of Iranian missiles were quite precise, impressively precise. Precision was quite impressive. Also report last couple of minutes that Israeli forces evacuated their bases and their deployed air defense systems in residential areas, according to Iran's IRGC. Well, it was Israeli leadership, isn't it, that were claimed that Hamas is using civilians as a human shield. And nowadays, we are clearly seeing that many Israeli military facilities, military infrastructure is embedded in residential areas. So Israel was doing exactly what they were accusing Hamas, and it's factual, by the way. It's just factual, right? Israeli military and intelligence infrastructure was heavily embedded in residential areas, and still is. This is the case. Also, during this morning strike that Iran conducted, the retaliatory strike, the stock exchange building in Tel Aviv sustained a serious damage, which was right next to a military target, by the way. And the shockwave damaged that building also. But I have seen videos. It sustained some damage, but I don't think this damage is structural. Some windows were collapsed. It was a glass facade, and this glass was shattered. But building itself didn't sustain the structural damage, so I guess it will continue to stand. And well, that is for latest reports on Middle Eastern matters. If any breaking news, of course, I will do even additional live stream, by the way, if necessary. But now let's continue with some other news. With other news. Although before, let me remind you that well, this media project, dear friends, is well, completely subscriber funded, isn't it? It does exist as long as I have your support. And if you like my work, if you think I deserve to be in this field of news and political commentary, please consider to become a Patreon for this project or the sponsor. You can support by literally subscribing to my Patreon page. You can choose your level of monthly support there, from $5 then up to it's up to you there. You can subscribe to my Boosty page, where I have also a lot of extra content, as I do on the Patreon. And you can donate to this project through PayPal platform, Boosty platform, and also during the live streams. By the way, you can become a premium subscriber on Rumble, and also you can use Rumble super chat for donations, because my channel is monetized there, and there will never be monetized on YouTube. So on YouTube there is no super chat, but there is one. There is such an option on Rumble. So yes, if you want to support, there is a number of ways you can do it. All the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And many thanks to everybody who supported and continues to support and allows me to stay in this field of news and political commentary for a third year now. Truly grateful. Thank you. That being said, dear friends, let's go through some other news now. And I will start with this report from RIA Novosti that Russian air defense systems on duty intercepted 81 Ukrainian drones overnight. 19 drones were intercepted over the Bryansk region, 17 drones over the Kursk region, another 30 drones over the Smolensk region, also 7 drones over the Volgograd region, 6 drones over the Oryol region. Also, drones were intercepted over the Rostov region and Crimea. 3 drones were intercepted over the Belgorod and Astrakhan regions, over the Ryazan region, and 1 drone was intercepted over the Moscow region. Also, the TASS news agency is reporting that Russian air forces liberated 2 more settlements, one in Sumy region and another in the Kharkov region. So the Russian air forces have liberated two settlements, Novo-Nikolaevka in the Sumy region and Dolgenki in Kharkov region. Let me show you on the map, dear friends, these areas. In the Sumy region, well, buffer zone is becoming bigger and bigger, almost, I mean, literally on a daily basis. And let me see what was the name. Novo-Nikolaevka. So Novo-Nikolaevka, where is that settlement, by the way? Novo-Nikolaevka, this is the settlement, by the way, that is under full Russian control now. Unfortunately, there is no icon there. This maps administration have to improve its work. And another settlement that is in the Kharkov region is this one, Dolginka. And this area is also under full Russian control. It seems like Russian troops are further intensifying military operations on the northern side of Kupiansk. And I guess soon we will see Kupiansk being either fully or at least partially encircled. That's the most likely strategy that Russian troops have in this direction. Although I'm no military expert, so obviously it is difficult to say. Let's see how the situation develops. But Russian troops improving their positions all along the front line on, literally on daily basis, and in no circumstances Kiev regime, in my personal opinion, will be able to regain initiative on any of their directions. Also, dear friends, let me share with you this information that, yesterday Russian president, before opening of the before participating directly in St. Petersburg's economical forum, had a large press conference in which journalists were participating from all over the world. And let me give you some key statements of Russian president on Ukrainian conflict. For example, Putin reiterated that Russia's military involvement in Ukraine was triggered by the West's refusal to acknowledge Moscow's legitimate security concerns and failure to compel Kiev to uphold the past agreements and protect the Russian-speaking population in Donbass. 100% correct, by the way. Nothing to add, right? The Russian president expressed a willingness to resume peace talks, but insisted that any agreement must be signed by the legitimate Ukrainian government, a direct job at Vladimir Zelensky, whose presidential term expired more than a year ago. He noted that peace proposals developed during the 2022 Istanbul talks, later derailed by Ukraine's Western backers, who sought to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia, could still serve as a framework. That initial agreement that was reached by sides in 2022, by the way, excuse me, could still serve as a framework, but only if new realities are taken into account. And we have a quote from Putin here: "As I warned, the situation is going to get worse." So it got worse for them, for Ukrainian side. Now we are not talking about Donetsk and Lugansk, but about two more subjects of the Russian Federation, two more regions of the Russian Federation, and Crimea, of course. Let's discuss this, Putin said, and dear friends, if, as I said many times before, if Kiev regime will not accept Russian offer now, then give it another 3 to 5 months, and there will be another 3-4 more regions, and eventually, if you're interested in my opinion, I think Russia will have no option but to go all the way up to borders of the Western Ukraine, and Western Ukraine eventually, most likely, will be claimed by its Western neighbors, Poland, Hungary, and Romania. Situation is moving in that direction because it seems like globalists will continue to prolong this conflict in their dream to achieve a strategic defeat of Russia until they can mobilize anybody in Kiev control territory and throw into tranches, right? And there's still, by the way, millions of people in Kiev control territory, like up to 20 million potentially. So therefore, it is becoming obvious that most likely than not, Russia will just have no option but to further intensify special military operation and liberate whole of territory of this former Soviet Republic up to borders of the Western Ukraine. Western Ukraine is a different situation, different story. It was a part of other countries, right? And let those other countries deal with it. I think that would be correct way to go forward. We will find out. Let's see. Also, Russian president spoke about NATO rearmament and said, asked about NATO's growing military budgets and rearmament drive, Putin bluntly dismissed the idea that Russia poses a threat to the US-led military bloc as nonsense. He argued that Russia is fully capable of defending itself and continues to modernize its armed forces with their far lower budgets. Western claims that Russia may attack NATO countries, he said, are their deliberate fabrication designed to manipulate public opinion and conceal domestic failures. And this is true, by the way. I was saying very same stuff for how long now, right? He accused Western leaders of using the Russia scarecrow to justify inflated defense spending and likened their rhetoric of Nazi-era propaganda, citing Joseph Goebbels' dictum, the more monstrous the lie, the more likely people are to believe it. And unfortunately, this is true. And take a look at the societies in the West, by the way. They've been zombified. Majority of the societies in the Western world being zombified. And I guess they really believe that we here in Russia are dreaming about attacking countries left and right. Like if we have nothing to do, nothing else to do. Which is crazy, isn't it? All we want is to be left alone, by the way, so that we will just live our lives in peace, right? That's all. It was a NATO that was endangering us. We did not move our military infrastructure closer to Berlin or Paris or London, right? They moved their military infrastructure closer to us. But yet again, propaganda, unfortunately, is working, right? And people in the West being zombified. Very many people, majority. And they probably truly believe that, we are literally dreaming about attacking, I don't know, Germany, France, or Italy, Denmark, UK, and so on, which is crazy, man. Putin warned that this kind of military posturing only escalates global tensions while diverting resources from social and economic development. He cited Germany's economic stagnation and their decline of energy-intensive industries as a self-inflicted consequences of its decision to decouple from Russian energy. And this is also true and factual, by the way. Everything that Putin says can be checked, by the way. And I was saying very same stuff I don't know how long now. It seems like since forever. Also, Russian president spoke about Berlin's attempts, basically, actions to derail relations with Moscow. The Russian leader voiced a stronger skepticism about Germany's potential role as a peace broker in the Ukraine conflict, asserting that Berlin has lost its neutrality. He pointed to the presence of destroyed German Leopard tanks on the internationally recognized territory of the Russia as a proof that Germany is no longer a mere supporter, but has become a co-combatant. Berlin's potential supply of Taurus missiles to Kiev, he warned, would not shift their military balance, but would completely destroy any remaining trust. Well, is there any trust still there? I don't think so. But Putin being generous, I guess, and very diplomatic. He said this, but I don't think he trusts even slightly anybody in the current leadership of Germany. I don't think so. Responding to remarks by newly appointed Chancellor Friedrich Merz about being open to dialogue, Putin said Moscow was not the one to break off communication with Berlin and suggested Merz was welcome to call if he was serious. He further accused Berlin of sabotaging its own economy by cutting energy ties with Russia. Volkswagen is dying, Porsche is dying. For what? Putin asked her rhetorically, questioning the logic behind the Germany's economic decisions and mocking what he described as their ideological stubbornness. Yet again, correct. What I can say, by the way. Trump, Russian president also spoke about Trump. So asked about U.S. President Donald Trump's claims that the Ukraine conflict would never have happened under his leadership, Putin responded that Trump is probably right. He praised Trump's transactional approach to the politics, noting that as a businessman, he can count the costs and understands the economic consequences of international decisions. This, Putin said, makes him more pragmatic than the previous administration. And yet again, he was very generous in diplomacy, by the way. I mean, I would definitely not be this nice or polite towards Trump or anybody from the collective West leadership, for that matter. But yet again, Putin time and again demonstrates top level of diplomacy, top level of politics, because he is one of the very few heavyweights that this world has right now in a geopolitical arena, right? Putin expressed openness to further contact and future meetings with Trump, provided they are well prepared and result in positive outcomes. The track is well chosen, he said, referencing several phone conversations. We have a great respect for his intention to restore relations with Russia in many areas, both in the field of security and economic activity, said the Russian president, who also spoke about Iran-Israeli conflict. Obviously, Putin stressed that Russia firmly opposes any further escalation between Iran and Israel. Asked what Moscow would do in the event of the assassination of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, Putin refused to even entertain the notion, calling it a scenario I won't even discuss. Putin added that Moscow has not been asked to intervene militarily in the conflict and sees no reason to alter its current stance. While Russia previously delivered air defense systems to Iran, he said Tehran has shown little interest in broader cooperation. And I remind you on that, dear friends, that a couple of days ago, Russian philosopher and public figure Dugin stated that during the work between Russian and Iranian experts on bilateral strategic partnership agreement, Russia was proposing military alliance to Iran, and Tehran refused. And if correct, by the way, if sources of Dugin are correct, and that's exactly what happened, then we now all understand that that was a huge mistake on part of Iranian political leadership, that to refuse a military alliance with Russia. Anyways, instead, Putin advocated for mutual security guarantees to protect both Iran's right to peaceful nuclear technology and Israel's right to security. He said Moscow has put forward several compromise frameworks to all stakeholders, including the US, Israel, and Iran, adding that he holds out hope that diplomacy will prevail. And, well, let's hope diplomacy will prevail because, as I already said, by the way, only Western ruling class, globalists, neocons, and Zionists and their assets in Israel, Israeli government, want a bloody regional war in the Middle East. Rest of the world don't want it. Rest of the world wants to see peace. in the Middle East and everywhere else. And therefore, let's hope diplomacy will prevail, and let's hope Moscow and Beijing and other capitals from BRICS, let's say, will manage to force basically collective West to back down, because they have to be forced at this point, I guess, diplomatically. I'm talking about, but if necessary, to prove the point, maybe, as I already said, Russia, China, other BRICS member states will send her, even India, by the way, that has good ties with Israel, but I don't think India wants a regional war in the Middle East, so they might join. Maybe Russia, China, India, other BRICS member states, Brazil, South Africa will send their navies, by the way, into Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf to make sure that Western elites, collective Western, will back down, and they would not be able to provoke war in a region between the neighboring countries. That will eventually, obviously, will transform into sectarian violence and their ethnic hatred and ethnic violence. Let's continue with some other news. And yesterday on my Telegram and Twitter X page, I shared this information too, that NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, stated that Alliance will classify data on military aid to Ukraine, and a good try, one may say, ironically. Obviously, this will be done to somewhat hide transfers of long-range weapon systems to formally to Kiev regime. In reality, it's NATO that operates with these long-range systems, being British Storm Shadow cruise missiles, French Scalp PG cruise missiles, US ATACMS tactical missiles, or potentially German Taurus long-range cruise missiles, right? And the Russian president was very clear on the topic of potential deployment of Taurus missiles. He said that, that would not change much on the battlefield. That would not turn the tide, obviously, but that will be final blow to Russia-German relationships, for sure. And no matter what German intelligence, militaries, and the political class, what kind of explanations they can come up, that this was not German Taurus, this was a Ukrainian builder missile or something like that, it will not work. Russia knows perfectly well what is done by whom, when, and why. And if Germany has intelligence services, then Russia has also, and a much more capable one, much more advanced and sophisticated one than Germany will ever have, right? Let's be clear on that too. So it is what it is. RT is also reporting that, as the Russian president pointed out, by the way, during the press conference with journalists from all over the world yesterday, his aide and his envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, the CEO of Russian Direct Investment Fund, also stated that Brussels making EU as uncompetitive as possible. And this is true, by the way. This is absolutely true. People in Europe, citizens of EU member states, I don't know if they are even capable to wake up at this point. I mean, majority, but if they are, then they should, until there is anything left from economies there, right? Because Brussels, extremely ideologized and inadequate Brussels, is clearly destroying European economies for their sick geopolitical agenda, whatever that agenda is. And this is true, by the way, and this is just factual, right? And I will end the news segment of this update, dear friends, on this information that India and Canada vote to reset ties after years of diplomatic spats. So India and Canada have agreed to reset ties after years of tensions, which culminated in the mutual expulsion of their top diplomats in 2024. Good news, I will say, it was a huge mistake on part of Ottawa to escalate with New Delhi, right? And if new Prime Minister of Canada is realizing that and wants to rebuild relationships, then okay, that's something of positive, and everyone should welcome. So good news, at least some good news, by the way, isn't it? When it comes to geopolitical stuff and international relationships. And well, now let me check if there was any super chat. And was hate MSM. Thank you very much for super chat. Have you heard if Russia or China been helping Iran defend itself? Well, as I already reported, dear friends, Russia has transferred their air defense systems to Iran even before this conflict has begun, and Russia was ready to further intensify cooperation. Right? Iran was not ready for that, based on reports that we are seeing right now. When conflict is in place, I'm more than convinced, by the way, that Russia and China and a number of other countries will do whatever is necessary to help Iran, being weapons, intelligence, diplomatic assistance, political assistance, and Russia is doing it, right? At least on an international level, on political terms, diplomatic terms, Russia is in full support of Iran. When it comes to military assistance, of course, that kind of information is going to be classified and no one going to say nothing about it, right? But trust me, Moscow and Beijing, in my personal understanding, in no circumstances can allow regional war to happen in the Middle East, and therefore both capitals, with most likely assistance of other BRICS capitals, will do whatever is necessary to save the region for regional war, right? From ethnic violence, from sectarian violence, and so on, and to protect navigation in Persian Gulf and through Hormuz Strait, which means, by the way, to protect Iran too, right? And also other countries in the region, because yet again, regional war is definitely not in interest of either Iran or Saudi Arabia or Qatar or Bahrain or Kuwait or Iraq, right? None of them want it. And to be more precise, only force that wants regional war is Israel, Israeli government, Zionists, neocons in US, and globalists that are in charge mainly of the collective Western countries. That's the only force that wants regional war. The rest of the world stands for peace, and hopefully peace will prevail. So my answer to your question is yes, Russia and China helping Iran and will continue to do so with whatever is necessary. It's not just weapons, it's intelligence, it's, as I said, diplomatically, politically, and if it comes to it, then with weapons, with intelligence, with their manpower, for example, there are plenty of high-level PMCs, right? We know some of them that can actually do the job, and I'm quite sure, by the way, Wagnerites, PMC Wagner wants to revenge for their comrades that were killed by either directly or indirectly by US militaries. So they will use their chance whenever they will have one. And that is just one example. There are many other PMCs, by the way, that will, would love to get engaged. But let's hope it will not come to it. Let's hope it will not come to it, right? Let's hope for peace and de-escalation. That is Moscow's position, and that's the position that I am standing. We all need peace, by the way. We don't need no more wars. But unfortunately, as I already said, world. I mean, nowadays news updates clearly look like some sort of a diary of the World War, isn't it? Was there any? Uh, hey, TMSM, thank you very much again for your super chat. Take kids for ice cream. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will. I will. Thank you for your question, for your support, donations, and dear friends. There was no more questions, no super chat, and therefore, if I may, I will end this live stream on that. If you come across short clips from the short or long clips from this live stream on YouTube or Rumble, please, if you have time, like those videos and leave some commentary there too. And under this video also, once live stream will end, that might help to reach wider audience. So this is it for now. Once again, thank you all for your attention, for your time. I hope program was informative and useful. And if so, I mean, you can show me that with your comments and likes, by the way. So have a peaceful skies, by the way, peaceful day, and take care. Bye for now.